podcast. Very excited for the guest that we have with us today, who is Jerilyn Sanders. And Jerilyn is the Senior Director of U.S. Economic Development Programs at the Chalmers Center. And I had the opportunity to get acquainted with Jerilyn maybe like last year, actually through CCDA. For those who do not know what CCDA is, it is the Christian Community Development Association. And Jerilyn was one of the co-leads for Economic Development Working Group. So thank you for joining us, Jerilyn.
I'm very excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yes, I'm excited to be in conversation with you, to just have an opportunity to share more about the Chalmers Center, but then also like where we are as a church, even in the nation. And for those that don't know, just want to put a plug in that this month is actually Financial Literacy Month. So we're, just tying it all in our conversation today. So with that, just want to share that the Chalmers Center actually works with churches and nonprofit organizations to rethink how they respond to poverty. And Jerilyn, I just want to know from you, like, what brought you to the work, but then also, what are you finding are the pressing needs right now at the center?
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. I was thinking about that question, like my background, what brought me here. It's really kind of funny how God does things and you don't always know what's going on. But so I grew up as a pastor's daughter. I'm a PK from a small rural town, which means my daddy pastored a tiny little church that could not afford to pay anything. So he worked in a factory and, for the income and the benefits, but even though his passion was the church. So that's why I grew up around all the things that people deal with rural southern poverty, lack of access to good education, low educational attainment rates, food insecurity, addiction, all those kinds of things. And I could not wait to get out of there and go to the exciting big city. God gave me the opportunity to go to the West Coast, Los Angeles, actually for college, for Christian
Wow.
college. And I got to see like a much broader vision of the global church, like people from all different um, ethnic backgrounds and language groups and denominational affiliations. And so just seeing how big and amazing God's church actually was. And there I felt a real call to urban ministry. And so I worked with city kids and families in Washington, D.C. for several years. And just, the juxtaposition from where I had grown up to where I was living and working and seeing just the complex nature of all the political, economic, educational systems that were surrounding these families and the choices they were trying to make kind of pulled me in deeper into education and wanting to learn, how could people break free of kind of these things that had them trapped. And so I really think that God allowed me to have all those experiences before coming to work at Chalmers, because I get to now uh, be in a position where I have all of those passions come together. God's people, education and empowerment, people on the margins, ways that the church can be creative and think outside the box, and ways that this can be empowering for African Americans and other people of color. It just all comes together for me at Chalmers, and the way I see the answer to your question, like what's kind of the pressing need, what I've come to understand in my 12 years or so here is I think a big pressing issue is that the church really has too narrow a definition of the gospel. That some people think of it only as being relevant towards saving somebody's soul so they go to heaven when they die, but really the kingdom of God is this incredible, massive takeover. Jesus said in Luke chapter 4 that I'm coming to bring good news to the poor. And so I think for the church's part, we have bought in a little bit too much to the so-called American dream and kind of these Western ideals of success and prosperity that have watered down the message of the church. And so that is the church not living up to its calling. And of course, when that meets the pressing needs that we see in our society, you don't need me to tell you about, the violence, the economic downturns, the pandemic, like all of the systemic issues that the world has to bring. the problem is the church isn't all, sometimes up to the challenge or has forgotten its call. And so that's why I'm excited that I get to do and see some of the things that I get to do and see in my work here at Chalmers.
Wow. There's a lot that you shared there that resonated with me, just of the interconnection between education and economics, right? And then also this latter point of the church not necessarily in a consistent way having this realization of kingdom, right? Because kingdom is not just the four walls of a said church, right? Kingdom is our divine right as believers, and also what it is that we are called to walk in, right? In every aspect of our lives and in multiple industries. So I thank you. I thank you for sharing that, and then also for your service, at this intersection. Um, as as I shared at the top, for those that are tuning in, this month is Financial Literacy Month, and just want to share just a little bit about just the context of our country, the United States. So, Annuity reported last year, and again, this is just last year, that financial illiteracy is an increasingly large problem in the United States. A fact especially true for minority groups and lower socioeconomic classes. According to a recent survey conducted by Standard and Poor's, only 57% of adults are financially literate. Again, only 57% of US adults are financially literate. So that means that close to half of the US population. And again, Jerilyn, you're seeing this, as you're overseeing, economic development programs in the country at Chalmers Center. That is a stark and striking gap, right?
It's terrifying.
Um, it's very concerning. So, how is it that you believe like the Chalmers Center is uniquely positioned to mitigate this gap?
Yeah, so I will say that so this illiteracy, this not really understanding how to manage your money, how to make decisions about money, how to um, use your resources, determine between wants and needs. I will say some of that illiteracy is actually people who have money and access to credit are making all the same mistakes. It's just that they have margin and buffer and access to credit. So that is part of the issue, but that's not the part that we primarily deal with. I just want to put I've seen that too.
Mm-hmm.
As an educational system, we don't broadly, just teach kids a lot of basic skills they need. But of course, if you're from a lower economic group or a marginalized group where your parents, your grandparents didn't weren't part of the system, they didn't know how to invest. How would they know how to teach you? So of course that leaves you further and further behind. So again, the good news that is that the church is that the kingdom is all encompassing. So that means the gospel can be applied to any and all parts of life, including people's money. And one of the things that Chalmers tries to help the church and God's people do, whether through nonprofits or church itself, is kind of redefine what they think poverty is. And so a Western understanding of poverty is just a lack of material stuff. And so we try to address it by giving people more stuff. Or sometimes people might address it from this point, well, it's a lack of knowledge. So we try to give people more the knowledge. And so what the framework that Chalmers used in all of our trainings or books or materials is this foundation that people are wired for wholeness and relationship in four main areas. And so if any one of those areas is off, poverty results. So we're wired to be in proper relationship with God, with ourselves, with others, and with the rest of creation, the world around us. So we see this poverty and financial literacy is not just about the lack of stuff. Like, so if I don't have a good job or I don't make enough money, that's my relationship with creation that is broken. But almost always that is paired with like either low sense of self or identity or esteem. So my relationship with self is broken.
Yeah.
Sometimes my relationship with God is broken because I may feel helpless. I may feel like God has forgotten me. I may feel like I'm cursed. I may feel like, why is God letting me struggle? I don't know that God cares about my real everyday life. And almost
Yes.
always in poverty, you see these broken relationships with other people. So
Mm,
why don't some people have better job? How do most people get their jobs? It's through somebody they knew. So if you don't have social capital with enough people who have, a variety of kinds of jobs, you don't have people in your life that can speak life and hope and encouragement into you, then that further exacerbates your poverty. So you can keep trying to give people stuff. You can keep
mm,
you can stand the street corner and try to give them information, or you can make an app that has information. But what people need is the presentation of the gospel and the good news, and even a financial literacy class that encompasses wholeness with God, self, others, and the rest of creation. So you'll never be able to give people enough stuff to make them self-sustaining. So
mm,
but everybody, no matter how little or how much, has been given some assets, something to work with, some skills. And so how do you meet them where they are and encourage them and say, okay, how do we work with this paycheck that you do have? There are some
mm.
things you can't control in life, but there's some things you can make choices about how you're spending your money. You can make choices about this plan or that plan. You can make choices to suspend some wants to focus on needs. And so we really try to help churches and God's people think about transformation doesn't happen because you give people information, and it doesn't happen because you give people stuff. It really has to get down to a different vision, a broader vision than just personal wealth. It has to be broader than just, you need to do better, or, so and so made it. Why can't you made it? It really has to get at the heart of it all is, does God love me? Is God want better for me? Does God have something for me? And so it's that hope paired with the knowledge, paired with the relationships with people, paired with this understanding of like, wow, God really cares about all of me. Jesus died on the cross not just to take away my sins, but also to restore my relationships with other people and with my money and with my job and with all of
Yeah.
all of these things in my life. God cares about that. So if the church really wants to be helpful and give practical solutions to people that are in this financial literacy space, I suggest we start with something more than just thinking about what information do they need, and we think
Mm-hmm.
about how do we be whole people in community with them as we learn together about our finances.
Wow. 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 A lot there. And I was composing myself as you were talking because I'm just like, oh, that's so good. That's so good. This, the piece about wholeness and that wholeness, right? Of it not just solely being information, not solely just being about one's relationship with money, but also one's relationship with self and one's relationship with God. Just the interplay with all of those factors, and also with others, right? With our community, and I know that, there may be some critiques just around like quote unquote prosperity gospel, yet the Bible does say that he calls for us to prosper, right? And he wants us to prosper as much as our soul is prospering. Our soul, our mind, you understand, our relationships, the things that we are connected to. God also wants those areas to prosper. And sometimes there is this disconnect between the church in terms of the walls of the church and community. So, organizations that are within the community that may be delivering services, but are not necessarily seeing this gospel piece. right?
Mhm.
So, what have you seen as just kind of ways in which, and best practices actually, between the church and local community organizations, and like implementing and immersing these program offerings into their collective work?
Yeah, I get the opportunity to oversee a couple of our, our our training ministries here at the Chalmers Center. So we are an equipping organization. So we have a program called Faith and Finances, where ministries and churches from all over the country are certified to offer this. It's more like a small group than a money management class. And our target audience, it's written and designed for those people who would say, why would I come to a money class? I don't have any money. Like that's who we
Mhm.
want. That's exactly the target group we're looking for. And so what we as we have had hundreds of ministries start to use this and implement this around the country, I've, you asked about best practices, and so what I've seen is like, okay, what has to be true for the people in your community to want to come to a financial literacy class? Because as we know, so oftentimes the people who are most um, financially illiterate are the least likely people to be pursuing uh, knowledge and information about it because they just don't feel like it applies to them. So some of the things that I've seen that when this is done well and in a holistic fashion, what these classes look like, they're not shame based. It's not about like, oh, you didn't do this, or you have how much debt, or oh, you didn't start saving for your retirement fund when you were 30. Oh, well, too late. So this is so many things that are out there kind of make people feel like it's too late for them, or they are behind, or they should have known better. And so we try to just not deal with not come from that approach. It's what do you have? What assets has God given you, and how do we build on those? And they don't all have to be financial. God's given you something between your ears. He's given you personality. He's given you people in your life. So building on assets that people have already, it has to be relevant to them. It can't you can't start the the teaching and the class with talking about investment income and paying off mortgages and rolling over your IRAs. Like it has to meet the realities of working class people who are the falling prey to the predatory lending. It has to work for the realities of people who are living check to check. It has to work for the realities of people who have relatives who are dependent on them. Like it has to work at the point of need where we're concerned about this subgroup of people that are vulnerable. So it has to meet them where they are. Um, it has to be enjoyable. I mean, I didn't. I don't know about you, but I didn't study math. I don't love accounting and spreadsheets. I'm not in this line of work because I just get a lot of joy out of reading down number columns. So
Ma'am.
what would draw to a money management class, it would have to be enjoyable. There would have to be people there that I enjoy talking to. It would be nice if there's food and it's funny and fun, and so we really have a very different pedagogical style where it's small group discussion. There's a lot of hands on. It's very practical. It's not one expert up at the room sharing information or slides or watching videos. It's everybody kind of in a gathering together, maybe on a weeknight or Sunday afternoon, um,
Mhm.
and so you're bringing together not just the people who want to overcome their financial challenges, but it'd also be nice if there were people in there with some life experience who are willing to be transparent and share their own knowledge and their own journey and to be cheerleaders and encouragers. And so best practices really include people that we call allies as part of the faith and finances class, who are walking, who are coming to class every week, who are walking, who are sharing, who are praying, who are checking up on them, who are holding them accountable. Hey, did you do your homework? Did you check your credit score? What did you find? Those kinds of things. And it really helps. One last thing I'll say is if this class is not just kind of an isolated plop down, like, okay, we did this class for 12 weeks, but really some of the most effective ministries we see doing this are kind of connecting a continuum of care in their community. So nonprofit organizations are usually called to like a specific, like they're doing substance abuse recovery, or they're focused on parenting classes, or they're focused on, the reentry community. And so they have a set timeline and a specific skill set that they're working with people around. The
Yeah.
church maybe doesn't have that specialty. The church isn't caseworkers. Church may not have substance abuse counselors, but what churches do have that those nonprofits don't is the ability to always be there, a family, a community, an ongoing place for people to land and have a home. And, as they transition through different seasons and phases of life's journey. So if you've
Yeah.
got some organizations that are walking with people through kind of like the disaster part, the crash and burn, and trying to help them pick back up, and then others who are trying to then take them from that point and, give them more education or give them a new start or provide new assets like that, the church can find its place in one of those places. So every community has a different mix, every church has a different calling. Everybody can't do everything, but in best practices are ministries who are finding ways to connect their strengths together and giving this continuum of care for families in their community.
Mm. I love how you started off by saying that, it's not shame based, right? Because a lot of what we may see, honestly, right now, where, social media is very, very accessible, various platforms where it's kind of a, well, here's this trick, one, two, and three, right? Like it seems very simple. But again, connecting it to what it is that you said earlier, a lot of this is very deep rooted. Poverty here in the Western society, it seems to be associated with the material aspects of it, right? But it's poverty of mind, poverty of spirit, right? Also, poverty of relationships. And the examples of what it is you gave as best practices were the church also being in community with local organizations and recognizing that there may be certain strengths that they have, like the organizations have, that the church doesn't necessarily have, right? And this continuum of care. So, not like this one and done, but how do you help sustain? Because this is, um, it's also a lifestyle, right? It's not just a as transactional as people may think that it is. It takes time for people to work it out, to shift, and for that transformation to actually take hold and to take root. So I appreciate that you called out this continuum of care, how important that is.
Yeah, and I love you use the word transactional because it's so true. Like if it was just about the information, well, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
then during the pandemic, we all should have gotten a free master's degree. We all should have learned another language. We all should have, lost 50 pounds and been in the best shape of our lives because the information is out there. We could have, gone and downloaded the manual. We could have watched the YouTube videos, but it's not just head knowledge. Like it is a process, and what you need is other people to walk that out with you. And it is not a transactional process. It is a long-term lifestyle change and choice. Just like, for dieting or quitting smoking or anything else, making hard changes in your financial life takes a lot of time and discipline and, you know
Yes.
steps back and then forward. And so yeah, it's not a quick thing like, all right, we check that off, you're done, next. It's who's with me in my life while I figure out how to move from
Mhm.
where I am to where I want to be over this next season.
Yes, yes. Who's with me in my life as I am making these changes? Because that accountability is also key, right? And
Mhm.
you even mentioned the point about like smoking, right? Or it could even be eating, that the money may be associated with another habit that again they're working together. They're working together. So even as you're making shifts in one area, there's going to have to be changes and shifts in another area. So thank you so much, Jerilyn, and I hope that others are taking note again of this holistic and the wholeness aspect of the work. Um, so last month was Women's History Month, and we also recognize International Women's Day. So Prosperity Now organization that is really on has been doing this work, around social, justice, poverty alleviation, prosperity, and really meeting the needs of those that are on the margins. They actually communicated some data. So please have patience with me as I report and share out what it is that they communicated in one of their communications. So they said repercussions of the COVID-19 pandemic have forced more and more women to rely on safety net programs, especially with rising prices on everyday items like groceries, baby supplies, and more. But even this help is fraught because saving penalties and programs like Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, which is SNAP, Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, TANF, and Supplemental Security Income, SSI, do not allow recipients to adequately save for emergencies. Even one unexpected expense, like the car needing a repair, can be devastating. They go on to say, in fact, 49% of Americans couldn't cover a $400 emergency expense in 2022. This is up from 32% in 2021. So again, 49% of Americans could not cover a $400 emergency expense in 2022. That is just last year. We're at the start of a new year. Also, in the midst of economic shifts, right? Even right now. So, with that, Jerilyn, I'm just wondering. This is another like data point that's like, whew,
Yeah.
um, what are some of the things that you believe churches and nonprofits should consider to be more proactive versus reactive? Like we already shared the data point about financial literacy in the country. And here, Prosperity Now just shared a data point just even about a population being able to access and have, emergency savings. So, what do you think the church and nonprofits should consider to be more proactive? Bearing in mind, again, there's already an economic shift underway right now.
Yeah, there's so much in what you just read there. Because there's the big picture systemic stuff. So like programs that are supposed to help people, safety net programs that are supposed to help people, actually penalize them if they have too much in assets. So even if you tried to save, then you lose what little bit of benefits you did have. And so that there's kind of the big picture, like those who are like pushing and advocating for better laws, smarter laws, and better policies, and all. Keep doing that. That's the kingdom too, because that kind of stuff is frustrating. Uh, But then there's also those steps that on the individual, personal, and household level. So that being the reality, knowing that um, there is such a thing as, I think it's called the benefits cliff, the cliff effect. So if I have, um, you know, SNAP or SSI, like I'm a grandmother, I'm taking care of my grandkids, and I get so much money, food stamps for them. If I start trying to earn more, I actually lose my benefit. People are disincentivized from like earning too much, because then they'll lose what they have, and then they end up in worse financial situation. And so the church, if you're going to be walking with people, if you're going to be helping people, you got to know that reality is there, and you got to be ready and able. Don't just come in with a bunch of shoulds of what people do. Like that's the reality they're dealing with. So are you willing and able to be there to walk with people if they're going to be at risk of dealing with these benefit drops? um,
Mm-hmm.
think about something proactive that specifically churches can do. Nonprofits, I think, already do this a little more, but your benevolence policies. What are your policies when somebody walks in the door and says like, "Hey, I can't pay my light bill. Hey, my kids don't have enough food." Do you everybody's church has that issue. What are your policies and plans for how you're going to use your resources? Who your target audience? Are you focused on a particular geographic area? Are you want to help only people who are within the church? Are you have a plan before? Because it's going to happen in increasing numbers. It's you're
Yeah.
going to see people who are hitting up against that wall. If half Americans can't meet a $400 emergency, $400 emergency, like I had three of those last month. Like something's going to happen to your car, something's going to happen in your house. Like these things
Right.
are going to happen, and people are going to be um, pressed to make hard decisions. And so, how churches can be proactive is know that it's coming. Think about your policies. Think about what monies and assets do you have to offer that you would want to give. And if you're going to give, what's the relationship that you're going to want to have and be prepared to have so that it's not just transactional. A lot of churches fall into this frustration of being, people just want to see them as an ATM, and all they say is like, okay, well, you can get money if you come to church, but there's not enough there to really have authentic relationships without proactive thought in advance. The Chalmers Center also has a benevolence training that we do to help those who are in leadership think about how can we be in relationship with people and walk with them through these difficult times. Um, and to go back to something I said before, since your church can't be good at and can't do and can't handle everything proactively, it's a good time to do a survey of okay, who's doing what in our community, who is providing things that are good and that are helpful, and that we can be at least in enough ideological alignment. They may not be everything you agree with denominationally or whatever, but at least in enough agreement that we can work with them, we can refer to them, we can get referrals from them, we can have relationship with them. They may have, I mean, there are a lot of nonprofits out there who would love to have a church that would say like, hey, we're going to host a financial literacy class. We would welcome your participants in. We'll host it at our church. We'll give them a dinner. We will work with you to do that. That is proactive, looking at what resources are in the community, where are the gaps, where can we step in, because we know it's going to happen. We know
Yeah.
people are going to be looking for something and in need of something, and what a great opportunity for them to see the church as like, oh, this is somebody, these are people who are in the community to help us, or that care about the fact that my back is against the wall and I feel overwhelmed. Well, look, there's people working together to come and provide a safe place for me to make some changes.
Yes. I appreciate how you mentioned authentic relationships, but also in addition to again going back to this continuum of care, right? And continuum of support. It's not simply just the program offerings of the Chalmers Center, which are pretty great, right? You mentioned a benevolence training. There's also, the faith and finance, right? But it's also what are the resources within your community that can help enlarge your capacity, right? Again, it's already scripture, right? That there are several different members of the body, right? We do not have the same function,
That's right.
right? So you just have to own what it is that you have and just an area of growth, right? That another aspect of the body, and it may be in the community, it may not necessarily be faith based, there may be some ideological differences there, but they're able to, because of whatever capacity they have, right? They're able to meet a need, and then there is a bridge and is a medium that's met that can be the birthing of opportunity for a partnership, right? And just like greater expanse and relationship building locally. I thank you, and I hope others took note of that. And as Jarla mentioned, it's going to happen, right? Like if in 2022 the data point was a significant amount of Americans did not even have enough for an emergency of $400, again, with multiple layoffs that have been announced, will be announced, right? Like this is already coming down the pipeline. So it's very important for those that don't necessarily have that equipping, take the proactive stance to really consider the current policies that you have. How can you learn more just about offerings at the Chalmers Center, but then also who is in your local community, because this is going to take a concerted effort. Um, I'm I'm curious because again, here we are, where there is, an economic downturn, impending economic downturn. And, Chalmers Center has been around for some time. So what were some of the, lessons learned from even 2008 and 2009 that you feel that we should bear in mind for what's to come?
As you were talking, you reminded me of something that I heard someone say that when you want to work in this space of poverty alleviation, people always tend to overestimate the amount of work and training that the low income participants need to do, and they always underestimate how much work they, the helpers, need to do and invest in like
Mhm.
training and preparing themselves and checking their own hearts and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, this um, making yourself available to be a learner and a listener and uh, being prepared yourself instead of assuming that if you're not struggling or you're still working or you have money in the bank that you just need to give people all the answers in your life. That would be the wrong thing to do. And ps doesn't help. It is not only does it not lead to transformation in other people, it exacerbates that broken relationship with God and self and others. And so being wise that there are large scale things happening out there. So what's going on, with COVID relief and ending, certain benefits ending, and with long term health problems, know that you're going to see people who are going to have the compounded effects of years of not working or and having medical debt. So how can you be proactive about that? We incarcerate more people than any other developed nation in the world. So what I've seen over the last 20 years is whether you meant to be or not, if you're a ministry that's trying to help people who are struggling economically, you're going to be involved in reentry. You're going to be involved in people who have um, some kind of record to deal with. So what resources do you who can you connect with that's going to help people deal with coming back to needing to be employed and needing to have a place to live and needing to have a community again? How are you preparing for that? Housing. Housing is completely unaffordable right now, whether you meant to be in housing or not. Every ministry I know has people coming to them, and part of the issue is they cannot afford to live. They don't have a safe place to live. And so housing is good. Who can you partner with? Who can you pair with? Not every little church can build a housing development. You may not have the power to buy houses, but there are people in your community who are doing that. So again, knowing what's coming, paying attention to what's happening in the headlines, and expect to see people with those issues walking through your door. So being thinking about who is going to be in your social, in your sphere, in your network, that can help you troubleshoot these kinds of things. Parenting is another one. With changes in abortion laws, there are going to be more overwhelmed women with young children who are in need of support. What a great place for the church to walk alongside because nonprofits, again, they're going to have a tight window of what they can do. They're there to give out car seats or formula, but what about the
Mhm.
whole life of raising a child? So I
Yeah.
think one thing that I've learned from that last financial downturn is to like be ready, be paying attention, be getting yourself and your network prepared. And then there's kind of three things I've seen of ministries that are successful with either our financial literacy or our work readiness ministry. You got to have so one person who's just like the on fire, apostle, John the Baptist out in the wilderness, just one person out there by themselves can't sustain a ministry like this. So you've got to have the buy-in of your leadership. You've got to have a team of committed people who are willing to kind of take this on and be part of ongoing solutions. And you've got to have relationships with people that that you can call by name, that you want to invite to be part of this empowerment journey. So if you do all of this work but you don't actually know any low income people, or you don't actually know anyone that you would invite to the class, then your first step is just figuring out connecting with it and knowing your community or knowing your audience, or again, maybe connecting with a ministry who has people that need support, and then your church can be volunteers, or whatever, in ways that bringing those two things together. But there's those are things that I've seen have been like really important to having sustainable financial literacy ministries, and so I think that I would still counsel people to keep looking for those same things.
Okay, okay. So buy-in from leadership, a team of committed people, and then also those that you can leverage and be able to call by name to help, on the empowerment journey. There was something that you mentioned, Jerilyn. You said because there are folks that are going to be coming in, and I know that's not necessarily where we were going with this, but it just struck something in my spirit that there are also those that may not necessarily come into the building, right? So I would even say, how can you show up as a ministry in the places where people are? To
That
Jerilyn's
is a
point
great.
about meeting people where they are, they may not be in the building, right? But they may need, again, this wholeness that is so much packaged and embedded in the work of the Chalmers Center and in the work of ministry, right? So they may not necessarily be even within the current four walls of your church, right? Or maybe people are not as transparent about what it is that they need on the inside of the building. So, how can you show up to be in partnership with a local organization that maybe they may be low on capacity, right? Maybe they, because of the pressing needs, may actually value and receive the support that you would be able to provide as a local congregation.
Yeah, thank you for saying that, because it's true. There are some people who go around and knock on the doors asking for help, but there are probably a whole lot more people, sad to say, who would it probably wouldn't cross their mind to go to a church, because maybe they don't think that that's
Correct.
a place that would be helpful, or they weren't exposed to. They don't know what goes on there. It's different
Correct.
generations. So yeah, they may be hanging out or going to other places looking for help. And I can think of several stories of people who were looking for some financial help and were surprised to find a Jesus that cared about them. Like they never knew that Jesus cared about their financial situation. They never knew that God, had put a plan together in place to reunite them with their broken relationships with their family. So it's, how can we delight and surprise our community with a God who shows up where in the realities and the messiness of where they live.
Mm, I love that. Yes. How can we delight in a God that just shows up and shows up through you as well? Shows up through you,
Yeah.
through the work, right? Like we are the feet and the hands, right? Um, so as we wrap up, Geraldine, I just wanted to know if you can just because I mean you gave a lot of gems, a lot of insight. For those that may even still be wondering, okay, well, what does this look like? Right? Like, can you give us just some highlights of some testimonials, some great testimonials of like you seeing it work well with church and community?
Yeah, I have a few good stories, and one of them, has been with us on this learning journey for over 10 years now. So like they have gone through so many iterations. But the church I'm thinking of is in a southern city here, and it's a predominantly white downtown church that's located in a place that's like kind of right on the main thoroughfare between the community kitchen and the Department of Human Services and the homeless shelter. So they get a lot. They're the church I'm thinking of, where like they get a lot of people walking in and asking for assistance, and they have really revolutionized their their benevolence ministries. So like when someone comes and asks for help, or passes through, they have a Wednesday night kind of all church Bible study that they do, they invite people to come to that. If they ask for assistance, they invite them to come to dinner. They invite them there. They're immediately in the community. Someone sits down and does an intake with them. What is it that you're looking for? What is it you need? Tell us your story. And they're assigned someone who will walk with them. And so I think they have like a small amount you can get, just if you've got an emergency and they need to help you pay, heat or something, they'll do that. But if you want to
Mm,
continue, they open automatic. The first thing is like, hey, we have this ongoing class. We'd love to have you come join us on Wednesday nights. We'll feed you. We have childcare, something for your kids. And so they're inviting people in immediately. And so they have just, over the 10 years, I've seen them, stop and start and make mistakes and try stuff and create new stuff. But they have this beautiful ministry. Like I said, it's a predominantly white and pretty wealthy church, but their
mhm.
Wednesday nights have just this diversity of people that feel
Wow.
comfortable. People invite their, homeless friends in. People, I've seen people that have, all different varying levels of intellectual capacities and, races and just that Wednesday night is their welcome place. They've had people join the church out of, this, that became their little community, and their community just got larger and larger. They've had people, they actually have somebody they employ on staff now who came in originally through one of their classes, and so they have really built a community that allows them to not just be that transactional church that gives out money, but they really are a place that welcomes people and wants people to be in their community. And so the challenge they have is that they're trying to work with other nonprofits up and down the street who do just give immediate handouts to say like, hey, can we work together and can we identify ways that we can work together so that people can be pulled, not just keep having the same need over and over again. How do we see people delivered and set free and on their way to freedom and sustainability? So there's another church. I know a pastor that's in the Northeast, much more urban um, uh, congregation, and he started a nonprofit through the church that does outreach. Specifically, he wanted to minister to people who were, I think, coming largely out of incarceration, living in halfway houses, they call them. And so they do a lot with local nonprofits that are job placement kind of ministries, trying to walk with people who are hard to employ. So their church and the nonprofit connection works together in various shelters and ministries around their city. And so that pastor was proactive, taking his program, as you said, two different places that needed something like what he had to offer. Um, there's another ministry where it goes the other way. It was the homeless shelter that was trained in faith and finances, and part of what they did, for years was try to mandate that people follow the rules so that they could get the services. And one of the things was that people can't smoke if they're going to spend the night in the shelter, and so they finally just started using faith and finances and started letting people make their own decisions about a lot more things. He said more people quit smoking because they started tracking their expenses, faith and finances, than all the years of them trying to force people to follow the rules to, spend the night in their shelter. And so he started getting excited about what he was seeing, but he wanted more churches to be in like I need people to help me teach the classes. This is becoming so popular. So he actually does kind of poverty training with the churches and invites more of them in through the shelter ministry, so then they can take it back out and again, so that people have a home and a place to go and places to land, once they leave the shelter. So I just am so impressed by the creativity and the breadth of different ways that people are using faith and finances. Some people behind uh, local jail, but the bars of local jails, some of them with, single moms, some of them with, people in recovery, addiction recovery, just all kinds of ways that, it's, we train you with the materials. We give you the curriculum, we give you the script, we give you the skills to kind of understand and enter in the worlds of people, but then people can take it where they want to. And so I've been really encouraged at the churches who are getting outside of, as you said, their own four walls and getting much more connected with their communities and feeling like they have something real and tangible to offer people. And they have real and tangible success stories. People who are like, "Hey, I finished the class, I graduated, but I don't want to leave. Can I be an ally in the next class?" And so then they're bringing their friends and they're they're the
Yes.
encourager that's staying with them. And what a beautiful way to give people a new, not only perspective on themselves, but to go back to something you said earlier. God wants us to be blessed and prospered, but the reason is so that we can have something to give and to pour back into something else, and so that, or someone else. That's the ultimate goal, I think, for me, that I would like to see, through Faith and Finances and the work of church, is like how many people are not only just graduating the program, but like are feeling excited and empowered to then become also agents of healing in their communities.
That is so awesome and amazing. I'm so inspired by what you shared. And for those that are tuning in, like if you have examples, even in your current ministry, feel free to put it in the chat of some best practices that you're seeing locally, and that maybe even you consider it could be bolstered, even by the programming that the Chalmers Center has to offer. Before we close, Jerilyn, I wanted to know if you could just share, how can people get plugged in? How can people get connected, and kind of like what's the process for, maybe taking on kind of one of these trainings, or, working with Faith and Finance?
Sure. So if you go to chalmers.org, we do work globally around the world. These principles are applied in a lot of places. But if you go to the US training, you'll be able to see we offer several faith and finances trainings a year. And the way that works is it's all distance learning now, of course. You can sign up, but you'll be coached through it by an experienced faith and finances leader, and you'll be in a cohort of others ministries from wherever around the country who are all kind of walking through the training together. You'll also see there on our website, we have other trainings. I mentioned the benevolence training. If you think that you would like to explore an employment ministry, we have our work life ministry there as well. You can, that's more of you call and kind of get a little bit more coaching through and assessment to figure out if you've got readiness, and that would be a good buy-in. But yeah, go to our website, and you can always send an email to my department if you have questions, usprograms@chalmers.org. We'd love to be able to, answer any questions for you, or connect you with any resources we may be able to provide that would be helpful as you're looking around for ways that you can, as you said, bolster what they're already doing in
Yeah.
their communities.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Jerilyn. And thank you all for tuning in. Like, this was just such a very enriching conversation. I know that I was informed. I'm also inspired by today's conversation, and just really want to encourage you. It's not too late. Even as Jerilyn mentioned, it's never too late for you as an individual, or even you as a congregation and ministry, to be more intentional about this work, right? Of doing the wholeness of the gospel. Also bearing in mind, inequities that are in the world, and inequities that are in our local communities. As Jerilyn shared, they are prevalent in rural areas, in urban areas, in the Northeast, in the South, Midwest. It's all over. And right now, we would be remiss as a body if we did not become more intentional and take those steps to really consider how we can bridge a divide that has happened in local communities between church and community. So this is a great opportunity. The harvest is ripe, but the laborers are few. So this is an invitation, and I really hope that you'll check out the resources the Chalmers Center has to offer. And again, as I shared, if you have any recommendations, or whether your church or another church is doing things that are great, you can feel free to put it in the chat. And we look forward to seeing you at our next broadcast. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Imani. I'm so inspired by you as well. Thank you for the good work you do in Faith and Prejudice, all you all out there. This is such important work.
Thank you, Jerilyn. Thank you. Bye, everyone.